I think I got it right on the money. Hello, everyone. This is your friend Carlz talking about movies and trying to make do or respectfully translate what I said in Spanish into English the best I can. This week took a little bit longer. I did it intentionally because I wanted more people to listen to my Spanish version episode since I made it with one of my dear friends. We talk about these movies, and of course, when I do the English one, I do it alone, but I try to incorporate as much as the input he had on this week's episode. Well, this past week, and now, by the way, I'm using a background. Shoot, it's a little bit crooked from the movie Obsession, which is one of the two movies that I'm going to talk about today. And I didn't notice, but this cashier lady, does she have like a dildo candle on the counter? Is it? Perhaps, maybe. But okay, let's dive right into it. Last week we decided to talk about this pair of movies that probably were the breakout horror movies of this year. Those being Obsession and Backrooms. Two movies that were highly publicized, very well received. They did a shit ton of money. Like, we're talking about absurd amounts of money. Like, I think Backrooms was made on a budget of like $100,000 and it made like $1 billion or something. It's some crazy shit level we're talking. But this movie's success, more than just talking about the movies, I think ultimately it led me into a whole set of thoughts that weren't really related to them. So as I watched both of them, we can talk a little bit of the particulars of each one. One of the things that I noticed on both of them, from my perspective, is that I thought they were just okay. That was the main thing. I was like, why were these movies so big? That's like the big thing. Big. That's like the big thing. Why were these movies so big? It sort of made no sense at the beginning, but then you start like digging through them, and you do realize that there's something about them that connects them in a way that is plenty obvious once you sort of step back and watch them. And it's like that both of them feel sort of authentic. They feel organic in a way. But the movies themselves, they aren't that good. So, if we start with Backrooms being this story of this guy who gets lost into what they call like a liminal space that is inside of his store. Like 97.5% of Backrooms is just this guy lost in this space, which is called what they call the Backrooms, right? And that's all good and dandy. And while you're watching Backrooms, you do get absorbed into the visuals of it. Visually speaking, Backrooms, it is great. It might even be a masterpiece. The way they play with the limited space they have and with the visuals is just amazing. It's a great feeling to see something so real, so organic, so tactile on the screen. But here's the thing. I've said it before many times. I always look for a twist in horror movies. I always look for not necessarily a message. A message is kind of like condescending, but some sort of I think message is the best word, but do not take message as like a big message. You take it as something the movie is trying to say. And what is Backrooms trying to say? Backrooms plot is awfully confusing, and it relies a lot on classic like misdirection and confusing. So the thing about Backrooms is that it appears to have a purpose. It appears to have a message. The movie starts with the main character psychologist talking about the like kind of like the backrooms of your mind, right? Talking about we all have our secrets. We all have thoughts about ourselves, whatever, right? But then, how does that translate to the movie? I think Backrooms has a seed, a desire to become something bigger. We talked with my friend during my Spanish episode how the latter parts of Backrooms, when they try to introduce a little bit of the lore, a little bit of the world building, if you want to call it, when you get this company who apparently discovered this space and they don't really know what it is. As I see it now, I think Backrooms has two running parallel kind of like spirits. The one which is basically this avant-garde visual experiment in horror, and this other part of it which is more plot oriented, where they try to, as I said, world build this idea, which I don't know. If we also talked about it with my friend during the Spanish episode, the proof of concept for Backrooms is gonna be any sort of potential sequel to it. You know, we have a situation with Backrooms where the message, the potential message or story, is really clouded. And I think if you put that next to the avant-garde visuals, you can at least create an ambiguous set or like an ambiguous communication exercise, which means that I don't need to explain to you what the Backrooms are or what this company is. I can let it to you and your experience visually with this movie to figure out what it is. If that was the case, this would be a way better movie. So we'll see if the temptation to make Backrooms 2, I said 2 in Spanish, the temptation to make Backrooms 2 sort of start taking you towards this really plot oriented thing. And it's ironic because what I don't like about Backrooms is that the message of the plot is really convoluted. You see, it's a weird sort of balance, because I really felt kind of like duped by Backrooms. There are some kind of like clues that makes you understand the success of Backrooms, in my opinion. One of them is, as I said at the beginning, the organic feel of the movie. And the other one, and this is like funny to me, is like as I was watching Backrooms, I could not see all of these creepypasta types of games and shit. Like if you're part of the gaming community and like streaming community, horror game community, you've seen these visuals a lot. This sort of it's not strictly first person, but they use the concept or the format of found footage in Backrooms to create this first person experience. And then you realize why they do it, because they are trying to emulate these creepypasta games that basically there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of these games on Steam and any other gaming platform. It's just a classic scary game, this first person shit with forced perspectives where like something happens at the corner, you know. Visually horror wise, this is something we've seen in creepypastas, on Reddit, and in video games for decades by now. So you can only reach that conclusion that maybe movie people, like critics and I don't want to use the term, but like normies, they haven't experienced it. But if you've been in that world, Backrooms doesn't feel necessarily new. On the contrary, it feels kind of played out. Just this visual posture, and if you play and just seen those games, dude, you can basically see how Backrooms would be a video game. Just you stuck on the backrooms in like procedurally, that's a hard word, procedurally generated stage where you as a player would be running around the backrooms and getting lost and opening, and you can see the game literally there. Like you are lost in the backrooms, right? They are generated procedurally randomly, and the objective, let's say, is escape from the creature for a couple of minutes. That's a game. That's a video game that you sell for $10 on Steam, and you get streamers playing it and screaming, "Oh my god! Oh my god!" It's basically that. Is that sensation? Is that bad? No, but in the movie way, in the movie sense, I can't help but ask for more. During the Spanish episode, my friend brought up a movie which is called Zone of Interest, which, if you haven't seen it, it's basically you get to experience the daily life of this family, this Nazi family, whose dad is in charge of the concentration camp right next to it. Right? So they do this visual play where you never see the concentration camp, you never see the suffering, you hear the suffering, you see the smoke of the furnaces, like, but you never see it straight, like you never see it explicitly. It's just that movie is so brilliant, and that is how you play into like a visual message with substance, with creativity. And this is one of the first things it made us raise our eyebrows. Zone of Interest was a great movie and it was well received, but it wasn't as breakthrough as Backrooms. And it makes you think, right? Why Backrooms and not Zone of Interest? You know, it makes you think about that. And if you've been into horror as long as I have, like other movies start popping into your head. And curiously enough, some of them also led by YouTubers, like Bring Her Back. We also remember Bring Her Back, the movie about a grieving mother who tries to bring her daughter back. Literally, that's the whole plot. It was also made by YouTubers, but it has so much more substance. It has so much more weight, but it didn't make $1 billion. You see my point? So then we go into more of Backrooms as kind of like a posture in general, and we start to realize that perhaps it was much more than the movie which brought this success. You know? So let's jump into Obsession. Now, it's no casualty. Is it casualty or is it not coincidence? I think casualty means something different in Spanish. Like if you try to match some words, it can get confusing. So you better change it to coincidence, because casualty in English is like when somebody dies right out of like an accident or something. But whatever. Then you jump into Obsession, which by coincidence got tangled up with Backrooms. This is something that I was interested in these movies, but it wasn't until they got way too big where I felt the pressure of watching them, like a literal pressure, because I'm a horror fan, and you so rarely see the press being so adamant about horror. And then you raise your other eyebrow and you go like, shit, why are these two movies getting so caught up together? Like, oh, young directors doing organic shit and everything. Okay. So then you sit down to watch Obsession, and I think I liked Obsession even less than I liked Backrooms. Let's say I didn't hate either of those movies, but okay, Backrooms, at least it was visually stimulating and it was like an interesting watch. Then you get to Obsession, and Obsession, it's even harder to dig into it and see something unique. And as I say, it's not a bad movie. The thing that they both share, and I have said plenty up to now, is that they have a really organic, palpable feeling. But plot-wise, dude, the only conclusion that I get with Obsession, to me, is that it really feels like a Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark sort of episode. It feels like the director grew up with Goosebumps or something and tried to make these stories, these horror stories that back then they had to be told in this kind of like fairy tale story, like with a lesson behind it. Even if it was horror, it was, don't be greedy, or like, I don't know, don't be, I don't know, greedy is the only thing, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. Like fairy tales, they have these teachings at the end, like, oh, if you eat too much candy, you're gonna get diabetes. It's that sort of vibe. So they grew up with that, and now that they're adults, they know that they can push the boundaries of that concept, like visually, how you show it, how extreme you get, how explicit you get. So in Obsession has way more plot than Backrooms for obvious reasons. So this guy is in love with one of his co-workers, and he uses a magical wish to make her love him. But since it's a wish, basically what happens in kind of like an ambiguous way is that this wish forces her to love him, but since her true self doesn't love him, it creates like a persona that like takes over her. So the core of Obsession and the core of the good parts of Obsession, of course, it's Indy Navarrete's performance as the main lady. There's something really strong in a conceptual and visual way when she plays a person trapped inside of herself. It's pretty haunting to see, and she does a really good job. And as I said, the movie goes to very extreme lengths to be explicit about it. But the one thing that both me and my friend sort of saw in Obsession that was kind of like weird, at least in my mostly in my point, it's like I found it really hard to sort of see the impact of this message. And ultimately, and this is something really weird, I couldn't get behind the reality breaking plot point of the wish. Like, let me explain. Until the point where he makes the wish, the movie is on a realistic plane of existence. Everything happens as it should. Once he makes the wish, the movie goes into a different plane, a plane of fantasy and everything. But I can't sort of accept that weird transition they make. I can't. It's like if everybody could buy these things and make wishes, why doesn't everybody do so? How can it be just a weird up secret? And I guess the whole point of the movie is to make that element of magic and mysticism to break with reality, right? Like the moment he breaks that stick, there's a break in the movie and you go into a different plane of fantasy and everything. But that happens, let's say, almost less than halfway, or a little bit, maybe halfway through the movie. And the problem is, once that happens, the movie becomes sort of annoyingly repetitive. Like it just keeps drawing and escalating over the same thing. That same thing being that she's not her, that she's being taken over by something else. During my Spanish episode, my friend would said that he would really find it annoying that that whole thing could have kept going. You know, and that relates to the fact that the first half of the movie happens in the real plane of existence. Like it makes no sense that she was so messed up, that she was so fucked up, and nobody did nothing about it. Like it makes no sense, and to me, I found it a little bit exhausting because behind the visuals of her being creepy, being obsessed, killing people, I don't know, making all of those really strong scenes of her like pooping herself, or like, you know, all of that visually strong shit. To me, the message was already said. To me, the message was already clear. As I said, with this goosebump sort of mechanic, or like classic narrative, like we already knew he shouldn't have asked for an easy way out of it. He shouldn't have. We already know. So then, why do we keep seeing this? Why? What else is it gonna give us? The progression of the latter half of the second half of Obsession, to me, it lacks the progression and the achievement of some other movies. In that occasion, during my Spanish episode, I couldn't help but think about Smile 2, a movie which I like a lot, and my friend brought up The Substance. These are movies which which have like progressive, not teaching, but progressive message throughout them. Like they go in a race, right? They go into in a curve. They go up towards the climax of the movie. It seems like that doesn't exist in Obsession. We keep seeing the same and the same thing and the same thing, and by the time the climax of the movie comes, like it just sort of happens. It's like it doesn't have like a like you can take movies like The Substance and Smile 2 and think of them as a balloon, right? That it's filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up, and the climax of the movie, they explode. In the case of The Substance, they literally explode, and it's so cathartic. And you, as a person, you sort of see the balloon popping and that hitting you in the face, and you having an awesome realization of what you have saw. I said the same in not a horror movie, but in an episode that I loved, and I really hope most people would get into it. In my Hamlet episode, it's the same thing. Like a climax of the movie, which is so powerful, which is so revealing. Like it's telling you right there, right now. You know, this was what the movie was about. I didn't mislead you. I didn't intentionally take you some other places, but I was giving you clues. I was giving you intensity of the characters. You know, in Hamlet, I took you away from Shakespeare. I didn't want to show you Shakespeare. I wanted to show you what made Hamlet, which was Hamlet, which was his son. So when the balloon explodes and the mother finds out that Hamlet is about her son, and she has this shared experience with the rest of the audience. You are there. You are the rest of the audience. You know, in Smile 2, I don't tell you what the demon is. I don't tell you the whole backstory of the main character's addiction with drugs. I don't make it explicit that I'm criticizing both the show business world and the perception of females on the entertainment industry. I'm not saying all of that to you. But at the climax of the movie, where she explodes and she can't contain the demon any longer, she explodes in front of the audience, and they do this brilliant shot, which I love, where they show the audience reacting to it in the context of the movie. They are all getting possessed by this demon. You see the reaction of normal people, not big actors, not normal people reacting, being shocked. And you are there, you are in the audience. You are being shocked. Like, this is what I was trying to tell you. In the substance, that amazing final scene, like amazing, like where the last stage of the monster, Frankenstein's monster, if you want it. Frankenstein monster was his explosion was its purpose was to show you humanity. The substance monster, its purpose is to show you how ugly you are. And the monster starts puking at the audience, and you have a choice. You have a choice in the substance. Are you sitting there with those misogynist assholes, movie industry moguls who are being puked, or you finally feel part of the monster and you want to puke at them? Those are great climaxes. My friend also made a comment on how for him as a queer person was really important to sort of make the how can you call it? I don't want to mess it up, but like that body type of, it's not dysmorphia, but that sort of not being comfortable with your body as an element of a movie, which is in Smile 2, which is in The Substance. But then we go back to Obsession, and when Obsession ends, it ends like with a bang, quite literally. And it seems that any sort of message is lost in the process. It is shocking, it is, but there seems, if any, hard to read something more in it. One of these something more things that apparently a lot of people saw in Obsession was this criticism to toxic masculinity. And now, bear in mind, I will never defend toxic masculinity. I'm by no means the perfect cis hetero guy. I'm by no means perfect, but I understand that is a plague to masculinity in general. The fact that we're being taught to be this sort of over possessive assholes. That's how we were raised. Gladly, I'm not a person who. I think in a way I'm not a really masculine person, because I don't really have those many instances of life to be masculine. You know what I'm saying? So I have the male gaze because that's the gaze I was brought on to, but I don't really have the chance to, because to be really toxic masculinity, you really need to have plenty situations or positions or interactions where you can get to be toxic, even if you don't realize it. I don't have that. So I had the privilege of having situations where I can always take a step back and think about what I'm saying, trying to apologize, trying to be better just human being, right? But apparently a lot of people saw in Obsession, in the main male character, some sort of toxic masculinity. And now I'm not denying it at all, but I really think the movie doesn't do it that well. I need to go back to that point where I said both planes of existence broke off before he asked for that wish. I think that guy represented what 90% of not only males but also females, traditional cisgender, um, timid person. Like if you're not an outgoing person, can you honestly tell me you've never wished for someone to love you? Before that point, that shit is super innocent. The guy is a wimp, whatever you want to call it. But like, I saw a lot of people comments online like saying, "Oh, he was just a simp for his co-work and everything." But before all of those concepts were in, he was just a dude in love with her. Of course, later in the movie, he shows his true colors and he shows his real weakness and his real, if you can call it like that, his real toxicity as a man trying to possess something as an object. You know, um, my friend would mention it in a really poignant way that in the end, for example, one of the scenes of the movie where he is having sex with I forgot the character's name, but the dude is having sex with the dude, because I think dude is for both genders. But no, he's having sex with the girl, and since she's sort of she's having like an out of body possession, but like only he gets a release, a sexual release, and he doesn't care, and she's just laying there like feeling nothing. That's one of the explicit ways in which this movie has a claim to toxicity. But as I said, I think that it's a bit not unfair, but like the reveal seems so convenient. I don't think it's logically necessary to go out from being a timid person to being a toxic guy. So if that is the message of the movie, uh, I don't think it's really that clear or that well done. But anyways, he's a douche, and he basically ends up taking the only way out he has. Like, I don't know if the movie doesn't give you the chance or the option, even conceptually, for him to be something else. It goes into a rampage, and this is a spoilerish, but even let's say, okay, he's a toxic guy. Why wouldn't you give them a chance to redeem themselves? And the plot of the movie itself doesn't do that, doesn't allow for that, because he calls by the phone. He calls at the wish company, and they just tell him like, okay, you either make another wish or you kill yourself. Those are your only two choices. So there's no chance for redemption. It's messed up, and I think probably that's one of the things people would enjoy about it. But anyways, it's time to go. I'd like to try to wrap it up. People can see that extreme sort of expression in both of these movies, and it's good. It is a good content. It is a good horror platform. Nothing necessarily needs to have a happy ending. Sorry, or nothing, or not everything needs to have a message. I get that, and I share it, and even I appreciate it in some cases. But we go back all the way to the beginning of today's episode, to this big mystery on why these movies were so big. And I think that is the big contrast. Even if you can see both of these movies, even if you can see the good in them, even if you can enjoy them as a horror movies as concept, which they both deserve, so why were they so big? I take a clue from another of the biggest movies of this year, The Odyssey. You can say whatever the hell you want about Christopher Nolan, one of the biggest filmmakers of our generation. But deep down, people still go to his movies, not necessarily for some sort of weird concept, or not necessarily for some deep on it. You know why people go to see Christopher Nolan movies? Because Christopher Nolan's movies, in a Hollywood level, in a big budget level, are one of the last movies that feel like movies. They have this organic feel to them. It's no small thing to use practical effects, to rely on acting, to rely on narration, to rely on it. It's no small thing. You know, if you wanna stick into the more the nerdy side, why do movies like I was watching this commentary on Mortal Kombat 2 and Supergirl being Warner Brothers like big flops of this year. Why do these movies flop? And despite the fact that they might be weak in plot and whatever, like I really think they flop because they don't look good. A movie that doesn't look good doesn't feel good. You know? And curiously enough, that is one of the praises the latest Spider-Man movie has gotten, which I haven't seen. But a lot of people has praised the latest Spider-Man for its choreography, practical effects, the suit being real and not CGI in many scenes. You know, people crave that, and they crave it so much that they get it. Even if you get it from horror, you enjoy it, and that is something both of these movies have. And like it might sound funny, but like you see them and you sort of feel the real people, like feel the real sets, especially in Backrooms. Backrooms, what visually what it does is you can put that in a museum. It's amazing, and I think there is a mixture between that and, of course, for the press. I think, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, when you wonder why other good horror movies are not that big or they are not that much, they don't get that much attention, it's because the press doesn't give it to them. So we are in this sort of weird position where we have the perfect storm of movies which are organic. You know, it's not like the latest movie from Brad Pitt and whatever, like like big franchise slasher. None of them are. They're new people. They are creative people, um, and then you go like, oh, this movie is amazing because you have never you can say you've never seen it before, but probably has been just a long time. But you're like, oh man, these movies look so good because they do. And then you mix that in the perfect storm with the press. And what does the press care for? Money. And it begins escalating, escalating. Like, oh yeah, like this movie made 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. And then the movie keeps covering them and 300 billion, and. So, what is my closing argument? Are these movies bad? No. They're pretty good. Are these movies revolutionary? No. They are just put in that position by the press. Are they worth it? Sure, totally. Do they have a lot of weaknesses? Yes, they do. But ultimately, you gotta give it up to them. Because if you are a horror fan, of course you want more horror movies. And these movies has set up a standard of this new generation of horror movies. You have both of these guys, these YouTubers. You have Robert Eggers, and you have Zach Krieger from Weapons and Resident Evil. You have these guys being super creative, being above everything, being this sort of approachable horror. Not this really nothing niche on the back of the video store. Where you have these people bringing horror to the front and making money, which For us viewers, it means making or having more movies being made. And movies are a thing of probability. Perhaps you need hundreds of them being made before one big one comes out. But if there's no movie and no interest, you'll never have those 100 being made. And in this episode alone, I just mentioned a shit ton of good horror movies: Smile, The Substance, Bring Her Back, Zone of Interest, Obsession, Backrooms, Weapons. Everything Robert Eggers has done. In my Spanish episode, I mentioned Undertone as well. So yeah, these are good movies, good enough, but at least they give a good spark to the good old interest in, well, movies. Which is ultimately what we all want and care for. Right? So, thank you all for listening. Go watch movies. Go support horror, no matter how big or small. And see you all next time. Bye bye.